I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about our security posture assessment and how, given what Dave was talking about in terms of regulations and compliance and the world of pain, how you can start to look to rectify that to ultimately make yourselves look good, really, and also secure your organisation in a better way, improve that posture as we go. So one thing we talk about with our clients, and this has been going on for many, many years now, we have a whole raft of technology available to us. We've got Microsoft 365, V3, E5. We've got a list of technologies to turn on as long as your arm. I'm sure we've probably all been in that situation. We've got technology after technology. But how do we go about implementing that in the best possible way for our organisation? We're really keen to make the most out of the value that we can add from those platforms, but we need to be able to make sure that we can embrace this technology into the organisation. How do we adapt? How do we change the business to actually increase the adoption rate of these technologies? So one thing we started looking at was the development of a service. Now, we had Secure Score available to us, which is a great tool. And in fact, we actually use Secure Score as part of our SPA assessment. One thing that we started to hear from our clients, though, was it doesn't really contextualise the recommendations. So what we end up with is a really valid list of configuration items that we might want to turn on in our tenants to actually improve our security posture. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't really adhere to our own practices in our organisation. We might have initiatives internally that we don't get considered as part of those recommendations. So what we try to do is really understand your organisation in much more detail so that we can wrap and provide a lot more context around those recommendations. And ultimately provide you with a strategic roadmap of how to go about embracing those technologies over sort of 3 to 5 year periods typically. So that's really where the SPA was born, and I've been sort of the tech lead for the SPA now since it started really about 3 years ago. So we've gone through a huge development program with this platform and really, really excited to show you what it looks like today for those that haven't seen it previously. So that strategic engagement, really, it's more than just a programmatic assessment. We don't run a bunch of scripts to generate a load of tick boxes for you guys. We actually work with you to understand your organisation and what your project deliverables and initiatives are currently, where you see yourselves in the next 3 to 5 years, understanding your risk vectors and what is critical to your organisation's success. And we then run our own programmatic assessments to enrich those recommendations with that data that we gather. So we really do try to work in partnership as opposed to come in, run some stuff. We've all probably got audit fatigue, I'd imagine. Nearly every client I speak to has had audit after audit, but it's that context that we've been missing, and that's really where that strategic engagement really comes into play. But ultimately what we produce at the end is an interactive dashboard which charts your progress over time and can be rerun, re-executed in the future, so you can actually start to see the changes that have been made in your environment and hopefully demonstrate some of that ROI back to the business. As with any security audit, we do score you, and I'll show you how that works in just a little while. We need to give a nice dashboard with a scoring just to show that we're making improvements, or in fact sometimes, hopefully not, the other way, but we don't ever expect, as with any security audit, that you're ever going to get to 100%. That's not the purpose of this. If we can get to a baseline level where we're all comfortable and we align to where your business needs to be at, and again through that understanding of your project initiatives, then we're generally happy with that. We try to align, and I'll show you this in a little bit more detail in a moment, but we align to predominantly CIS, so we use CIS benchmarks. As Dave also mentioned, we're now a Secure Suite member, so we can benchmark you against CIS framework, which is great. But we also try to take those recommendations and align them to the Zero Trust framework and the MITRE ATT&CK framework as well. And you'll see in the dashboard, when I show you in just a moment, the ability to actually tweak and tune those search filters, so you can actually generate a list of recommendations that is suitable for your own organisation. And it's something that we're working on and improving all the time. So as more regulations come about, what we're trying to do is bring those on board so that we can allow you the opportunity to spin that data however you want. But ultimately, it's not a list of technologies that you need to go away and turn on. It's a contextualized list of recommendations based on people, processes, policies, and technologies. So not just a strict technology roadmap. So I mentioned some of these briefly already, but some of the challenges we receive when we speak to our clients are really around, communicating those risks and those recommendations back to the organisation, typically at board level as well. A lot of the value in Secure Score and the Microsoft compliance checks are very technical, but what we need to be able to do is actually demonstrate really the risk back to CXO level. So we've kind of geared the dashboard a little bit around to that CXO level. There's a few pretty graphs that you'll see is quite high level, as is the scoring, but we do provide the ability to then dig right into the technical aspects of each of those recommendations. So we've enriched that data with loads of other attributes based on our own real-world experience of implementing those technologies, those tools, those processes. So you get essentially a whole raft of metadata around each of those particular points. But ultimately, we have the dashboard, which provides the CXO level view, and you can then drill down into the technical aspects for the people that are going to be making those changes. The dashboard is yours. Once we've run an SPA, you get access to that over the web through a secure MFA-enabled team, so you can actually jump in, start investigating your environment, digging into those recommendations, and you get to keep that for a period of time. We also chart historical trends in the SPA. If you run multiple SPAs, generally organisations that run multiples look to run it every month to 3 months, and then you actually see the history and the trends of how your score is improving. So again, great one to communicate back to board level. Another really key area, and something we see quite often, is actually organisations looking to make that bump up to E5 from E3. So how can we help build that business case, that justification for making that step up? We have the ability here to highlight certain areas or risk areas for your organisation that would require that step up. So licensing is considered in this assessment as well. So that's another area where this might be able to help your organisation when you're looking to build that case. Another one here is, am I using everything that I'm paying for? Ultimately, that's really where we want to be at. We want to be making the most, particularly for our clients in the E5 suite. Let's make the most of the tools that we have available to us in that suite to maximise our security posture in our estate. It's changing. This is, as Dave's domino slide suggested, it's a moving target. This is changing. The landscape's changing. Threats are changing constantly. So we need to really be able to evolve in our organisations to be able to cater for those threats, those risks. A lot of organisations talk to us and say, this is all great. We have the licensing available, we have the tools available, and we know we need to turn on these technologies, but we simply haven't got the resources internally to actually turn them on and manage these resources, particularly in areas that are evolving rapidly. And this is a constant, something I hear all the time. And ultimately, with the SPA, you have that list of recommendations on how to improve your security posture. And you can take that away and you can work with those recommendations yourself, or you can look to engage a third party. As Kocho, it's something we do day in and day out. We can help close down some of those recommendations and improve that score over time, if need be. But you have all the knowledge that's included in that SPA available to you to dig into. So a couple of the key deliverables, I've touched on them really just there, but you get a detailed interactive dashboard. I've got some screenshots in a moment that I will take you through. I don't have a demo on this laptop, but if everyone's interested to have a look, feel free to grab me after this session. I've got a demo on my laptop. So you get that interactive dashboard where you can drill in to the prioritized recommendations. You can also see any mitigations in there. So you'll see in the next couple of slides, we provide a score, but then we also provide a mitigated score because we understand, Kocho is a Microsoft first organization. We have a really close relationship with Microsoft. and we think the tools that they offer in the security space are the best tools for the job. But we don't penalise you in terms of scoring for using a third-party service to mitigate one of those recommendations. So where you have non-Microsoft products in place that do the job of mitigating that particular risk or that recommendation, we mark that as a mitigated score. So it doesn't score you down. And we can browse those mitigated recommendations when you're ready to make that jump to the Microsoft stack. So we try to align, as well as the regulatory bodies I mentioned earlier, we try to also align to our key pillars. So we have identity and access management, all really around the ability to manage your identity lifecycle, audit reviews, privileged identity management, the raft that's included there. We also have threat protection, which is really the ability to protect your organization against malicious code, malicious actors, malicious activities. So typically endpoint type protection. We have information protection, in which we consider the life cycle of your data, your data artifacts. So that's really all around protection for data at rest, data in transit, etc. We have security management. So this is really more process and policy based, but it's about your organization's ability to actually consume security logs and react to security events when they happen. We also have awareness, and this is more around, again, policy and process. How do you react when new cyber threats emerge? Do you have that ability to react? Are you quite agile? Can you improve there? And again, not specifically aligned to any particular technical element, but important nonetheless. And then governance pillar, which really focuses on assessing your organisation against sort of general governance and best practices. So you can see there's a raft really of pillars there, and it's not all technical, and that's something really to take away. It's not a technical checklist of things to do, because we've all got day jobs that are extremely busy as they are. Adding a list of new technologies to turn on isn't going to help. So it's really about considering the whole end-to-end stack. So some of the key benefits really of the SPA. So we give you improved visibility of what's going on in your organisation. So again, and I'll talk you through in a moment the credential analysis piece, because that's always an eye-opener. Some of you may be doing this already, but it really does shine a light on some things that you might not be aware of going on in your environment, and really pull those out to the forefront and light them up. We can support your organisation in adopting some of those technologies, as I mentioned. It's something we at Kocho do day in, day out. That's our bread and butter, so to speak. So if there is any issue with any recommendations, or you need a steer on where to go next, that's absolutely something we can support you with. Reduced risk. So obviously knowing what your risks are and what your recommendations are, we're able to start then improving that security posture. With the ability to track over history and trend, we can start to measure those returns. So actually, as we improve that posture and that score, we can start to see that improving in our dashboard and reflecting those changes. So it's a really nice way of actually demonstrating, particularly back to board level, actually what we're doing here is not only improving that security posture and reducing our organisation's risk, but we're actually, maximising our returns on those investments. Again, really important if you're looking to make that step up to E5. And really provide board level really with that confident decision making. Informed decisions are the best decisions. We don't know, if we don't know what our risks are and what recommendations we have out there in our tenant, where we're most likely to suffer, then we need to be able to have evidence to be able to say this is where we need to take our organisation next. And lower costs by consuming the technology that's available to us. Hopefully that will result in lower costs, support areas, service desk calls, etc., being able to actually reduce costs and improve services in that way. So let's take a look at the dashboard. Now these are going to be static screenshots that I've taken from the dashboard because I don't have my laptop here. But like I say, if you want to have a look at the live dashboard, feel free to give me a shout outside and we can take a walk through it. But this is the initial dashboard. So you can see here, has it trimmed oh no, it's not trimmed too much off. It has trimmed off the logo at the top, but that's okay. So you get the idea. So on this screen here, this is the landing page. So you get an overview really of the current state of your organisation. So if you start at the top left, we've got the MITRE ATT&CK, CIS and Zero Trust Principles buttons. So we can use those to jump into the various regulatory compliance areas, and that will spin this data in a very different way. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. And below that, we have the list of recommendations that are applicable to this tenant. Now you can notice there's a license column there, so we highlight where you have the correct licensing in place to mitigate those recommendations. Essentially, that means you're already paying for it. So if you fix it, there's no licensing cost, right? So if we implement any of those recommendations, you won't be subject to additional licensing. And we also highlight priority items in red, amber, green as normal. So if we look at the top right then, we've got applicable recommendations. So you can see in this, and again, the colours seem to have gone a little bit odd. You can't really see the colour of the compliant badge, but you can see that there are 72 compliant recommendations here. So, you know, doing pretty well here, still room for improvement. And we've got 105 non-compliant recommendations, and they are the ones that we'd be looking to tackle as part of an output of an SPA. We also break that down into priority again, red, amber, green. And this is all modelled in Power BI, by the way, so you can click on any of these and it will filter information. So if I clicked on high priority there, that would filter out this recommendations list, which you could then export to Excel. And you can see here that we've got a score of 41%. But really what you want to look at is the 55%, because that's the score with mitigations. So this particular example organisation has some non-compliant to Microsoft standard recommendations, but they are mitigated with third-party products. So we call that out, and we don't, obviously, as I mentioned before, penalise you for having those third-party products. And then at the bottom there, we've got the breakdown of the compliance within your current licensing suite. So we can see there that we have quite a number of licensed recommendations. They're the quick wins, really. Filter those by high priority. We've paid for them. We have the tools to remediate them. And we can really make some significant, very quick improvements to your security posture there. So if we click on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you can see that this has now changed to filter down through the MITRE ATT&CK tactics. Again, you can spin this by clicking on any of those tactics on the right-hand side. That will change the recommendation list on the left. So really giving you that ability to reorganise those recommendations as need be. It's the same for CIS, except we use the CIS areas, as you can imagine. And the same for our Zero Trust pillar mapping. This is quite interesting. We're seeing a lot of organisations looking at this now as there's more move towards that Zero Trust architecture and principle. This is being used here to help adopt those best practices into a Zero Trust world. So it's, and again, it's not something that we expect to go 0 to 100 and then stop. This is ever changing. New recommendations come in frequently. And it's something really that needs constant management, essentially, which is why we provide this interactive dashboard. What we found was a written report, which we previously used to provide with the SPA. It's very static, right? And it's not something that we can go in and manipulate very easily. So with that, we have the Recommendation Explorer. So this is the entire suite of recommendations. So if I was a technical sysadmin or type role, security role inside an organisation, I might want to play out or plot out a list of activities or recommendations to start looking at for my organisation. So I can use this filters list on the left-hand side there to really tailor and fine-tune my list of recommendations and export that to an Excel playbook, perhaps, that can then be used to go ahead and start implementing those recommendations. So really useful if you're looking at digging into those technical items particularly. And this is the Mitigated Recommendations Explorer. So you can see here this list of recommendations on the left are actually all the ones that were plugged by a third-party product. So you can actually see on the right-hand side, we call that out, and we actually have consultants that do actually enter text as well into this field. It's not completely computer generated. There's a lot of actual human involvement here. So we will actually review that setting, that recommendation, we'll capture that mitigation, and we'll comment accordingly, so it's available to you in your dashboard. So if we click through to one of those recommendations, we get the attribute viewer. So we actually here start pulling out a lot of that technical information. We can start to see actually the user impact for this recommendation is low. Okay, that's great. That might be something we might be able to bring up the list for a quick win. But you know, priority wasn't particularly high for us. That priority actually is based on your organisation's initiatives as well. It's not a static priority, high, medium, low. As part of our interview process with you, we actually develop those priorities and those initiatives. So it's very tailored for every individual organisation. But ultimately, we call out that information, those attributes. We start talking about, you know, if we were to implement this, what would be our training requirements? How would we report on the success of these recommendations? Essentially, you know, giving you that justification for why you need to go ahead and turn on these or rectify, remediate these recommendations. And this one is always an eye-opener, and we've seen some really scary results from this one, but it's really interesting. It always gets conversation going. So we also do a compromised credential check. So we take a volume shadow copy of your ntds.dipt file from your local domain, and we run that through some databases. It's processed sensitively, as you can imagine, through our own product internally, and effectively generates a list, and we can tailor this per organisation list of highly compromised accounts. So any accounts where the password has been exploited, and we can give this information back to you in clear text if you want. Some organisations prefer actually to have it obfuscated for obvious reasons, but because it can be quite sensitive. But it's really nice one. It's a really nice one, not just for scaring people, because that's not the business we're in, but it's a really good eye opener for things like, actually, you know, we've had organisations where we've started to see trends around, oh, welcome 2022, 2023 exclamation mark, and it really shines that light back on then the JML process, and actually what are we doing from a service desk point of view when we issue new devices. You know, is there a problem there? Or are we setting the same passwords for users when they're onboarded? And in many cases, that's generally the case. But again, something, you know, really quite valuable. Now we can do this separately. This can be done completely outside of the SPA, but it fits really nicely into the product as a whole. So we try to include it into the dashboard for you to see and start remediating. And then for anybody who can see, oh, it hasn't trimmed it off, that's okay. At the bottom there we have the SPA date, SPA date. It is a drop-down where we can actually pivot through all of the various SPAs that we've had run. As I mentioned, some organisations run this on a quarterly period. By using that drop-down, we can then go back and view that snapshot in time. But we also have a historical tab, which actually plots all of those SPAs and charts them over time as well. So very useful, being able to delve back into the detail. And that's our SPA dashboard.